here. Okay, I got it there. Accepted the recording in progress. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is really fun. I haven't spoken to the League of Women Voters for many, many years, so it's great to be back. I have a presentation. I'm going to share my screen and get started here. And so assuming that you are able to see the screen that I'm sharing here, please feel free to jump in, to interrupt me if you wish. At any time. I want to keep this as informal as possible, be as useful to you as it possibly can be. So what I'm going to do is I want to just, at the very high level, just talk quickly about what counties do. A lot of people don't know what counties do, even though there's a lot of interaction with county services. Give you just a quick snapshot of our organization, and then I'm going to dive into your questions. Thank you very much to Karen for giving me some ideas about what the audience would like to hear today and to learn a bit more about. I'll give you some of our legislative policy priorities for this upcoming short legislative session, and certainly questions at the end as well. So let me start with this really great video. It's just a couple of minutes from the Association of Oregon Counties to help us provide a foundation for what it is we do at counties.
Oregon's 36 counties weave together the fabric that makes our state a great place to live, work, and play. Most of us probably know what county we live in, but do you really know what counties do? When you drove to work, did you use a county road? Probably. Counties are responsible for maintenance on the largest share of Oregon's road system. Did you come across some construction along the way? County planning departments issue building permits, conduct inspections, and process land use applications. Counties are also responsible for the places you love to go for recreation, like county parks and county fairs. Are you worried about what might happen to Fido if he gets lost? Counties oversee animal control too, helping him get back home, safe and sound. When disaster strikes, counties are on the front lines, overseeing emergency management for wildfires, earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other hazards. And county sheriffs operate the jails and provide law enforcement to keep our communities safe. County health departments look out for our children, the elderly, people with disabilities, and protect public health to ensure our communities stay healthy. County Veteran Services officers provide support and resources for the men and women who served our nation. Getting married? County clerks issue marriage licenses. Buying or selling a house? County clerk records sales and property deeds and archive historic documents. Voted lately? County clerks conduct every election and count all the votes. While county services are vast, these vital public services are provided efficiently and effectively under the direction of an elected board of county commissioners. But only 17 cents of every property tax dollar on average goes to county government. That's right, only 17 cents of every property tax dollar. The remaining 83 cents of your property tax dollar goes to schools, cities, and special districts. Counties make the best use of every cent to ensure the highest quality of life for all Oregonians. Want to learn more about Oregon counties? Visit OregonCounties.org.
Okay, great. That's always such a helpful way to begin for folks. We hope to learn a little bit more about what counties do, and it's going to be the foundation of what our role is in policy making. For us, the policy making is really conducted by the Board of County Commissioners in terms of adopting policy. Now, I'm going to spend a lot of time, the rest of the presentation, kind of diving into how that happens. But to begin with, there are various forms of county government, and that also is part of the policy-making process. We have what we refer to as a strong administrator form of county government. So we have 3 elected county commissioners, elected countywide, and they set the policy direction for the organization, for the Deschutes County organization, and then they hire the county administrator, much like the city of Bend or Redmond. All of our cities would hire a city manager. They hire a county administrator to implement the goals and policies across the organization and to run the county's daily operations. So that's the form of government we have. Others would be where they would have a strong mayor form of government, or for example, a county executive where they elect the county board chair or the city mayor, and that person also then runs the daily operations. So that's the other type of local government structure that generally exists, but it's also important for the policy direction piece. So it's important for me to share a little bit about our organizational structure, because this also is going to be important for the policymaking piece. In addition to our elected county commissioners, we have 5 elected department heads. We have our county assessor, county clerk, our sheriff, district attorney, and our justice of the peace. We also have an elected county treasurer who does not oversee a department. So that's going to be important here in just a little bit as we discuss some of the differences between cities and counties, and we discuss what the role is of staff and various people in our organization in the policy making process. To give you a quick snapshot, as you can see here, we have about 20 different departments in the county. We have approximately 1,200 employees. We have locations that we serve across the county in each of our cities and our unincorporated communities. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment as well. The county, the board hires me, the county administrator. I'm fortunate to have 2 deputy county administrators. Together, we work collaboratively to ensure the county government is effective, accountable, and inclusive. We work within the organization and the region to align county work with the Board of Commissioners goals and policy direction. We support all elected officials as well as appointed officials. We have a number of appointed officials as well, and promote an informed public. So this is going to be important as we go forward and we talk a bit more about how we develop policy. So thanks again to Karen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into these specific areas of how we create policy. And one of the key questions I was asked, so what are the differences? What are the primary differences between counties and cities in policy making? Well, one of again, staying with the foundation of counties, we represent the entire county. We work for the entire county. We serve the entire county. So in our case, that's 3,055 square miles. About 78% of our county is owned by the federal government. That includes the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. Cities make up about 2% of the land that we have in Deschutes County. So the other 20% is a combination of privately owned property, state-owned property, county-owned property, et cetera. But the key is that it's a much more significant land area, geographic area. We have destination resorts, we have unincorporated communities, and we serve everybody in all of our municipalities, in our cities. So the county's area of responsibility is significantly greater. In terms of the diversity of issues, I don't want to imply that it's more important in any way. We have very important roles, both of us, but it's the area and the diversity is much more significant. The organizational structure is different. I just mentioned that we have 5 of our departments that are overseen. We refer to those as offices that are overseen by elected officials. Unlike cities, where they will hire a city manager, and then the city manager is responsible for appointing all department heads. And that's going to be important for taking policy positions on various issues, and we can talk more about that as well. The other key piece that's the difference with cities with the organizational structure is that our 3 commissioners are full-time. I'm in one office, and they're in the 3 offices right down the hall from me. They work full-time. They each serve on 15 to 20 committees across the region addressing policy issues on a number of issues. But whereas city councilors and mayors are generally either completely volunteer or they may receive a stipend. It's rare that they're even part-time. That's another important difference. One of the key differences is that many of the services that counties provide, we do so on behalf of the state. We are agents of the state. So we may be responsible for directly implementing state law, state rules, state services, state programs. And in some of those the cases where we're not directly agents of the state, we are either authorized or mandated by the state to provide various services. So that's another very significant difference between cities and counties. And then policy approaches, just given that we have so many more partners that we're working with on so many different issues across the region, everything we do, it touches so many people's lives, and it can do so in various ways and different agencies, depending on what the policy is and where it may be. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that as we go further. Some of the other examples, just the basic functions, as you saw in the video: taxation, elections, and as I mentioned, law enforcement. So of course, there's the Bend Police Department. We have the county sheriff. There's a lot more similarities than there are differences there, but one of the differences is the appointed police chief compared to the elected county sheriff. The judicial system, the entire law enforcement system. Counties are also responsible for community corrections. So that's going to include parole and probation, juvenile services. We're responsible for providing the county courthouse, which serves the state courts. Even though the state employees that operate and function in those places, counties are responsible for that. Land use is one of those areas that state statute really determines what counties can and cannot do, and state statute is state law adopted by the legislature. Whereas cities have, inside their urban growth boundaries, a lot more flexibility. There's a lot of state, I could say, I guess, state control over where the urban growth boundary is drawn. But inside that boundary, cities have a lot of flexibility on how they grow, where they grow, the types of development that they allow or don't allow. So that's another very significant difference between cities and counties that influences our policy process. And then in terms of federal funding, it's just going to be different. Counties, we're seeking a lot of federal funding, for example, for our health services types of programs that may come through the state, or they may be direct. But federal funding, we're going to be aiming for health services, wildfire mitigation, things along that line, whereas cities may seek it for community development, block grants, and other types of housing. So there are a lot of differences between cities and counties and how we approach the policy making process. So how do we work together to create policy at the state level? It's important to start with state policy really comes in three different big picture forms. One is ORS, that's the Oregon Revised Statutes. And ORS, the statutes are what the legislature adopts. Oregon administrative rules are what the state agencies adopt through state commissions. And then the courts can also establish policy. So it's helpful to understand just at least how the state even makes policy, because that really influences then how we engage with the state on various levels. So with state agencies, for example, our commissioners and our staff across the county will develop strong relationships. They'll work very, very closely with state agency staff on administrative rule issues and what changes to those policies, those issues might be that impact the services that we provide, or it can be funding. It can affect us and impact us in so many different ways. Relationships among, again, primarily this is going to be between our elected officials and primarily our Board of County Commissioners and state legislators, as well as their staff. But at the staff level, we also have strong relationships with legislators. So creating, maintaining, and sustaining those strong relationships with the agencies and staff are really, really important. Professional organizations, almost all of our department heads, I can't think of one that would not be included, have a professional organization that they will work with. I can go back to either the planning directors, or as I met this morning with our county assessor, the assessors organization, or the district attorneys association, or the sheriff's association. There are multiple with health services. They each have their professional organizations, and they are working very closely with them to identify what areas of state law through the administrative rules, and it could be legislative, it could be through statute as well, that need to be updated, revised, amended, or even repealed for that matter. But professional organizations are a really critical component to our policy development work. Of course, at the county as well, we work with the Association of Oregon Counties, that created the video that I showed at the start. And the Association of Oregon Counties certainly has a lobbying arm. And we work very, very closely with them across the state. That, as we all often say, counties are so unique and so different that certainly it can be a real challenge for AOC to develop one policy approach that is effective and serves all 36 counties. Often we disagree even among ourselves on what those policy changes may be. But professional organizations are a really, really big part of the policymaking process. Legislative work groups. So both our commissioners and primarily our staff are going to serve on legislative work groups. So this may be a particular lawmaker or a couple of state legislators that want to create a work group to create a legislative concept to address to create and address a state policy level issue. So we have staff frequently that serve on legislative work groups, and the legislative work groups generally meet outside of the legislative session in preparation for the next legislative session. Similarly, state agencies have rule-making advisory committees. So these are going to be the state rules that also are state policies that have regulatory impacts on counties across the state. We will often have staff that serve primarily as technical experts on those rulemaking advisory committees. And again, these are going to be with state agencies that then report to state commissions that conduct public hearings. Just like our local Board of County Commissioners do, they have broad authority to create state rules, state laws as well. Certainly lobbying is a very important function, primarily by our Board of Commissioners and our elected officials. Testifying on bills before the legislature, we frequently are sending letters on county positions to our state legislators, to legislative committees, certainly to the governor's office. We just sent one yesterday to our federal delegation regarding a Redmond airport related issue to increase funding potentially for a terminal expansion. So we're continuously, the Board of Commissioners, the elected officials are continuously lobbying on policy related matters. The final bullet point I have here, which is really the kind of the critical piece, is that it's a continuous process. Developing, influencing policy is an ongoing process. It never stops. We're either in session where we're lobbying, we're trying to change a certain law or keep a certain law from passing. And then as soon as the session ends, gosh, we jump right into the legislative work groups. It could be the agency rulemaking work groups. It's just a continuous process. And so diving a bit further into what is the role of staff versus the elected officials. So again, kind of going back to the organizational structure that I was mentioning, the elected officials can take policy positions. So those are going to be the Board of County Commissioners and the elected department heads can take positions on policy matters, whether it's a new policy that should be proposed or one that the county may not support, or one that should be amended, adjusted, etc. So elected officials take the policy position. Staff, we're primarily the technical experts. We can represent the Board of County Commissioners. We testify on the board on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. Of course, some staff go both ways. And the photo I have here is the photo just taken earlier this year by the 5 elected officials in the photo. From left to right, our county clerk, Steve Dennison, our county assessor, Scott Langton, Commissioner Patty Adair, our county treasurer, Bill Kuhn, and Commissioner Tony DeBone. We're all just reelected, hence I'm showing this photo. But the key here is if we look at our county clerk and our county assessor, they both, as I mentioned, wear both hats. They're going to be the technical experts for the clerks, for elections, for recordings, et cetera, and Scott with assessment, appraisals, et cetera. So they're going to be both the technical experts and they can take the policy positions. Going to the next one, dependent on the nature of the position. So again, I just touched on that. Some of our department heads and our key staff are going to be elected. Others are going to be appointed, which then goes to the reporting structure. So if our road department, if our health services department, if one of the other appointed departments, all those blue boxes on the organizational structure I showed at the beginning, below the county administrator and deputy county administrator, as administrators, as they identify policies that their organization or that they believe should be advanced, what they will do is they will then propose that to the Board of County Commissioners. We have regular work sessions with the Board of County Commissioners as we're preparing for legislative sessions, and then during legislative sessions, we're working with them on a regular basis. But the key is appointed department heads are not going to take positions on policy matters that are not endorsed, supported by, advocated by the Board of County Commissioners. The board sets the policy, so that's going to be the primary difference there. And throughout, as I mentioned throughout the legislative session, that we have regular meetings. We meet almost weekly. Appointed department heads, elected department heads, the Board of County Commissioners. We have a lobbyist, and then our local legislative delegation will also participate in those meetings on a regular basis. So in those circumstances, everybody's participating in the process. But again, it's going to be the elected officials that set the policy or take the policy positions, and staff that are going to provide a lot of the input. What are the impacts of various policies on the services we provide, on the communities we serve, on the costs, the budgets that we're required to administer? So some key differences between staff and elected officials. I was asked, so what skills do county managers need to participate effectively with commissioners in policy making? Of course, it's going to begin with being subject matter experts, of course, and that is going to be what everybody is going to be as a subject matter expert. But they also need to have a thorough understanding of the legislative process, the rulemaking process. So when do they engage? How do they engage? Who do they engage with? Throughout the process. It's going to be really, really important to identify when to be most effective in influencing policy on behalf, again, of either the Board of County Commissioners, or if it's an elected department head, for the policies that they believe are most important. And then policy impacts, really understanding what are the policy impacts of what on our community and our communities, because we talk about Deschutes County as being one community, but as we know, it's very, very diverse and different across the county. So policies can have very different impacts from one location to another. Political intuition is going to be very important, knowing where a legislative committee may be going with a bill, and then always having that sense of, well, our Board of Commissioners generally supports this policy concept or going in this direction, always having a sense of where the political dynamics are with any and every issue. So, and fortunately, our department heads are very, very good in this regard. Very clear and effective communicators, and very succinct. Often, it can happen that we can have a state lawmaker call a member of our staff during a legislative session, just very quickly, hey, we need to, we're drafting an amendment to such and such bill, whatever the case may be. I need, very, very quickly, what are the impacts? What is the county's position on this? And they need to be able to very clearly, succinctly, and effectively communicate what the county's position is, or what the impacts could be, or the service level impacts or programmatic impacts might be to our community. They need to be able to build relationships and build coalitions. If the Board of Commissioners, for example, takes a policy position, and I can use the example a couple of years ago where the board supported legislation to create rural accessory dwelling units, rural ADUs. It was very important. And I was the community development director at the time, to build relationships with other likely supporters of rural accessory dwelling units, including the Association of Oregon Counties, other counties, and other advocacy organizations that would support that. At the same time, it's really working closely with organizations that may not be supportive of some of the proposal. And so with rural accessory dwelling units, as you can imagine, not everybody was supportive of that legislation. So the key was to maintain the great relationships that we had with them, and really understand their concerns, and are there areas in the law that we can to address and to mitigate their concerns, so that it could work as well as possible for everybody involved. And we were collectively, not just myself, but our board and our coalition partners, were all very successful with that. And as a result, the bill ended up passing the Senate, if not unanimously, it was almost unanimously, and the same with the House of Representatives. So really being skilled and effective at building relationships and coalitions, and goodness knows, thinking on their feet and highly responsive. Board of Commissioners can be getting ready to testify on a bill, and something pops up, and they need to be able to jump right in and effectively answer the question. What is the impact? What is our history with the bill, the policy matter, the service, whatever it may be highly responsive, and being able to know the background and technical issues very, very quickly. We do coordinate very closely with cities on the coordination of policy development. Our Board of Commissioners meets regularly, at least a couple of times a year, with all of the cities in our region. That's a very effective way to develop policy together. We just did so. A great example, well, a couple of great examples. One was a joint meeting we had with the City of Redmond City Council just a couple of months ago, on addressing some water-related issues, and I can talk more about that in a moment if it's helpful. Another one was that we all worked very, very closely together in joint meetings, the Board of Commissioners with the City Councils on adopting House Bill 4123, which created the pilot project for creating the coordinated houseless response offices, which we now have in place and is operating. So those are a couple. Another one that we're currently working on at the very bottom there is the ballot measure 110. But the board meets regularly in joint meetings. Staff to staff, we are fortunate to have really great relationships among our staff with the county and each of our cities. And together, we're often identifying what are those areas of state law that we see that we think that should be improved, revised, et cetera, or just a new policy altogether. That we will then elevate to our elected officials. So we're great to have that relationship. Eric King and I, Ben City Manager, meet regularly. I meet regularly with the other city managers. In fact, the first Thursday of every month, later today, we'll all be meeting and getting together, and we talk about a variety of policy issues and coordination going forward, which is really helpful. The mayor of Bend and now the mayor of Redmond meet regularly with our Board of County Commission chair. This year is Tony DeBone, as well as Mayor Ed Fitch with Redmond is now meeting regularly with our commissioners individually as well. So that's a great opportunity where we jointly talked about what our policy agenda is going to be for the upcoming 2024 legislative session. Regional organizations, gosh, there are so many across our region. And I think this is one of our areas of strength. We are so effective at working across regional organizations, from the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, COIC, COAC, the Central Oregon, I always forget, I think it's the Area Commission on Transportation, but there are so many regional organizations that we work on together that include cities and counties and our regional partners, our regional counties and cities as well. To develop and shape policy. Lobbyists, the county, we have a lobbyist. Not all counties have one. We have a very effective lobbyist, we think, Doug Riggs, who also represents the Central Oregon Cities organization, referred to as COCO. But he also coordinates with the city of Bend's lobbyist very closely, Eric Kanzler. So our lobbyists coordinate on a regular basis, both here in our region as well as in the halls of the state capitol in Salem. They work very, very closely together, and we're in frequent contact, primarily during the legislative session, but certainly here as we approach the legislative session in, just less than a couple of months, our meetings are becoming much more regular. And so I just had a couple of examples there at the bottom of some of our successes. One of the successes with House Bill 4123, and then one is an ongoing topic of discussion right now, the ballot measure 110 reform. So that's a snapshot of how we create the county's role in policy making. Some of our legislative priorities coming up, goodness knows it's winter road maintenance is on the top of everyone's list. And it sounds like we are hearing some good news about that right now, about additional funding going to support winter road maintenance. But that's a big policy issue in the short session so that there's funding allocated to that. Community corrections, funding there, continued housing and homelessness support from the legislature, behavioral health, mental health. I mentioned the ballot measure 110 reform, and then the water issues. And what the water issue is, just to give you a snapshot of this one, is that the city of Redmond is applying to the Oregon Water Resources Department, a state agency, for water allocation so they can serve future growth. But the state Water Resources Department is in the process of coming up with new rules where they may not be approving such water permits. Well, that's a big concern for all of us. So that's an issue that very well could come up with the legislature. It is also one that we're coordinating on very closely with the city of Redmond, with the Oregon Water Resources Department, since that would be through administrative rule. And the application and implementation of the state's administrative rule on that. So the only other one that has come up in the last day or two that may be a legislative priority could be sustainable wildfire funding, given that the short session is really going to tackle a lot of funding issues that we see in here. So that's a snapshot of where we're going in the short legislative session. Great opportunity for us to promote everyone here participating now and who may watch this later to please get involved with your county government. We have a great website to volunteer for committees that or commissions that have open seats. We currently have the seats open. We're currently recruiting for our county's Behavioral Health Advisory Committee, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which we refer to as BPAC. And there are representatives from around the county and the rural county on that. Our Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council Board, we're currently seeking representatives from the tourism or recreation fields to serve that project. So there's more on there. We always like to promote serving your county, and each of these has some role where they may be involved in policy recommendations. Again, the recommendations would go to the Board of County Commissioners to ultimately decide for the board. So joining our team, the jobs, and then connecting with us on social media or participating in county college, which we encourage everybody to do. So I've concluded my remarks there. My goal has just been to give you a snapshot and then to turn it over to you for questions. And I see the questions rolling in. So I didn't want to spend the entire time just speaking. So thank you, Karen. I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, so Nick, it looks like we already have one question from Carol Leshy. How do we know what the county position is on the issues that you'll be working on before the state legislature this session? And she also wants to know where we would find that information.
Yeah, good question. So when we work with our Board of Commissioners, it's always going to be at a public meeting. And so generally what we're going to do is in a Board of County Commission meeting, we'll have the topic that the board discusses. And then it's often in the board meeting packet. And then they're all public documents. But, you know, I think we have a bill tracker that we post online for our legislative meetings. And what that will do is it'll have a long list of bills, where they're at in the legislative process, and then if the board has taken a position on those. And that's a public document, and we post it online for the Board of Commissioners legislative meetings, generally during legislative sessions.
Okay. Any other questions? I know that there are people on the call who specifically requested this presentation and suggested it as part of our survey last year. So I encourage you to ask questions, even though you've already submitted questions.
And I can share with you one topic that is coming up this next week is going to be the board is going to discuss the ballot measure 110 potential reform. It's going to be the first item on the agenda next Wednesday morning, December 13th at 9 o'clock in the morning. Our district attorney, Steve Gunnels, is going to be presenting some policy recommendations that I don't have all the lists in front of me right now, but it's the District Attorneys Association, the Sheriff's Association, the League of Oregon Cities, and I know I'm missing one. But in any event, that's a good opportunity to hear how the board will consider policy recommendations for the session on a really big topic.
Okay, I have a question for you. It was a great presentation. Thank you for that. I think very helpful for people who don't know how county commission or county interacts with the city and with partners. But my question is, I'd like to know who your lobbyist is and what their background is. And I also would like to know the process you go through to develop policy, because we only have 3 commissioners and we have a vast territory.
Yeah.
You know, representation matters.
It does. So our lobbyist his name is Doug Riggs. The Board of Commissioners, gosh, I don't think it was last year or the year before last, but they issued an RFP, request for proposals for lobbyist services. And Doug Riggs was the successful lobbyist in a very, very competitive pool. He grew up in Redmond. He's now based in the Portland metro area, and it's really great to have somebody that's local to have immediate access to the Capitol. So that is currently our lobbyist is Doug Riggs. And so, you know, commissioners, of course, they run on their platforms in their own elections and what their policy views are and their policy preferences are. And prior to legislative sessions, Doug will come up with Doug will begin to reach out to the county to ask us about our policy positions. which we then share, and which is the result of the list that I just provided a moment ago. And then the board will continue to discuss those issues to come up with positions that we take in the legislature. Now, the commissioners may all agree, and here's a perfect example, that ballot measure 110 should be reformed, but they may not agree on how. And so we will have an open public discussion at a board meeting where they will discuss what the county's position may be. And when two commissioners agree on a position, it's ideal if we have all three, but it takes two commissioners to establish the position on behalf of the county. I will say it'll be noticed as a public meeting, although I don't think that's I'm not sure how many people are going to attend, but on Monday, December 18th, our lobbyist coordinates with, I'm not sure if he coordinates with other lobbyists, other than the Central Oregon Cities Organization. There's a great meeting in Redmond at the Redmond City Hall. Well, there will be elected officials from across Central Oregon that will talk about our policy positions going into the 2024 legislative session. And then, commissioners, as I mentioned, commissioners serve on committees across the region, and throughout the year, they're identifying what policy positions may be. They will bring those to the Board of County Commission meetings and see if they have a colleague, another commissioner that supports addressing an issue. And then if so, then we will schedule that for a public meeting, and they will then discuss the issue and formulate their position. And at the staff level, whatever staff is involved, or whatever department it may be, will be at the meeting to help, I won't say guide the discussion, but provide the subject matter expertise, what the implications may be of various policy options.
And is that December 18th meeting open to the public?
We have to notice it open to the public. I think the city of Redmond is, because there could be quorums of commissioners, yes, and city councilors. As well. So that's correct. So that's one of the key issues with three commissioners. Not more than one can be engaged in any discussion on a topic with another one without it being a public meeting. So we're very, very careful about that. Whereas with city councils, Ben, for example, will have 7 city councilors, 3 members can speak about an issue. So that doesn't occur here with Deschutes County. Yeah, great question. And just given that the December 18th meeting, they will be discussing policy and there will be quorums of the boards, it will be noticed as a public meeting. Yep.
This question is about measure 110. It may be getting way too much into the weeds, but in terms of what we've been seeing in the newspaper and the editorials in the newspaper, and we also heard from Steve Gunnels last month, and he talked about the precipitous decrease in charges for drug abuse. And the other side of the issue with the engagement of people in treatment that's happening with the treatment centers, I'm just wondering, do we even have the data on how many people were engaged in treatment prior to measure 110? And then how many people we've been able to engage in treatment with all of the outreach being done by the treatment centers?
That's a great question.
That's a detailed data question, but I
Yeah,
wanted to see if you have that information.
I of course I won't have that information on hand now, but I would expect that our health services department would have that information on hand. They track data very, very carefully and closely with all of their programs, which they're required to do because so much of their funding is state or federal grant funding. And so they need to have a lot of reporting on all the services they're providing, to whom they're providing it. There's a lot of information. So can't guarantee all of it's available, but for certain programs, I expect our health services department might have it.
Okay, another question I see here is, what do you see as the most pressing issue facing the county today?
Certainly housing and homelessness is going to be our #1 issue. And our commissioners are certainly aligned on doing all that they can to help increase the housing supply across our county to meet the deficit that we have. I think our deficit today is 5,000 units across the county and going forward, and then addressing the houselessness crisis is absolutely critical. And as we know, that's not it. Housing is certainly a component of that, but there are so many other issues. related to the homelessness, houselessness area. Housing is a critical component, but mental health, there's a lot of topics. And we have a lot of departments that collaborate and coordinate to help inform the board on recommendations there. And that's another one. It's really important for people to see and watch the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. They meet next Thursday, a week from today. I think it's here in the county. I haven't looked at the agenda, the location of the meeting, but that board, which is comprised of a member of our Board of Commissioners and then an elected official from each city, as they begin to really talk about where are we going to go with the program, where might how might we support managed camps and other solutions going forward. So a very important meeting next week.
Thank you. And I assume I could probably ask Chris Ogren about when that meeting will occur and get that information out to people. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. One question is, why do the commissioners set their own salaries and give themselves raises? Is this common in Oregon?
Yeah, good question. So we have what's called an elected officials compensation committee. And so to step back, our budget committee is comprised of our three county commissioners and then 3 appointed citizen members. The citizen members they make up the elected officials compensation committee. And those 3 members will set the salaries for the Board of Commissioners, as well as the other 6 elected officials that I shared: the treasurer, assessor, clerk, sheriff, I'm probably district attorney, and our justice of the peace. So they set the salaries. And what we do is we, at the staff level, we will look at comparable jurisdictions across the state. For example, Lane County or Marion County, a bit larger counties. There's only one county that's really close up to us in size, and that's Jackson County. But we'll look at the comparables and we'll give them the data that we see what the compensation is, and then compare it to what the CPI is, the cost, as well as the COLA, the cost of living adjustments for county employees. And it's the elected officials compensation committee that sets those salaries for them. They do officially go to the full Board of County Commissioners and the full Budget Committee for approval, but the Board of Commissioners is not involved in the elected officials compensation process. That's going to be staff and the 3 citizen members that are doing 99% of that. The board just discusses it and votes on it at the end. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, thank you. So it's definitely not just the commissioners deciding on their salaries.
It's not. No, it's not.
Okay. The next question is, how do you interface with the largest landowners in the county? For example, the Bureau of Land Management or the Deschutes National Forest?
Yeah, gosh, we work with them on a regular basis, and it depends on what the topic is. Right now, our commissioners are meeting, I think, pretty regularly with Holly Jukes on the China Hat Road, the homeless camp issue there. But we work with them on a variety of topics. Our road department works with them on a lot of transportation related issues, a lot of transportation management issues. Our community development department may work with, for example, the U.S. Forest Service. Mount Bachelor is located on federal land, but what Mount Bachelor does require permits from the county, and often the 3 of us coordinate on what the permitting requirements are, et cetera, for issues there. I'm not certain. I know that our sheriff's office works with the federal law enforcement on federal lands. I don't know the extent of that in great detail, but we work with our federal partners on a lot of issues on a regular basis. In fact, there's a meeting that will be coming up here we don't have the date set yet, and at this point, I think it's going to be in early 2024. Where we have a number of residents that have expressed concerns about firearms and shooting close to their residential areas on federal lands in southern Deschutes County. So that's a topic that I know Commissioner Chang just heard about yesterday, and he had a meeting in Sun River, and Commissioner DeBone is helping to organize all the federal partners and law enforcement agencies to talk about. So how is there a way to resolve this through signage or we don't have authority, of course, over the federal government, so it would be ultimately their regulatory realm. But that's another area that we're working very closely with today on on with our federal partners. Roadless areas, we hear from rural property owners about off-road vehicles and impacts on either their property or their livestock, grazing operations, things of that nature. So we work with our federal partners on a lot of topics.
So that's definitely happening. The next question is, what is the annual salary for a Deschutes County Commissioner?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think,
someone, actually, I see Karen Zacharias answered it. It's around 130,000.
yeah, it may be just a little bit below that, but that's ballpark. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And in the next question, this is about using county facilities for the League of Women Voters candidate forums. Said in the past, the county government building was used for forums. Last year, we had difficulty reserving the room because staff was in negotiation with the commissioners regarding overtime pay for their services for such an event. Has the issue been resolved?
Yeah, I think so. I thought we did resolve that. We were like so many organizations, one of our biggest challenges last year was just staffing. We had so many vacancies, so it was really tough for us to pull that off. And if I recall correctly, we did resolve that, and it is open for that purpose going forward. And we certainly like to be a venue for your forums on elected officials. Yeah, the debates and a lot of the activities that you provide.
Okay. So I think that's a relief to many of us, especially the ones who are trying to schedule the forums.
Yeah.
So one of the things is in the news today is headlines regarding public officials getting threats of harm. And when you're looking at the county clerk's office or the county election office for the upcoming year, what kind of steps are being taken in Deschutes County to protect our public officials, particularly our poll workers?
Particularly which workers?
Poll workers.
Poll workers, yeah. You know, Steve Dennison was on that in a heartbeat immediately, where just taking the mail, for example, immediately they isolated the opening of mail to an enclosed room with all the proper gear. That was just, that happened immediately. And he was he immediately then circulated, and I don't have it in front of me with right now, but a whole list of protocols that we really need to take to keep his staff safe, to keep everybody safe, particularly with mail, because that's something that, of course, we interact with all the time. And we're continuously looking at ways to keep our poll workers, everybody safe, in close collaboration with primarily our sheriff's office, but also our local police departments as well. Steve is just remarkable in what he's doing to make sure that we're all safe. And then it's also the space we have is pretty confined. It's a pretty small space, and so we're continuously thinking about where do we locate our elections processing in the longer term, because we're growing. The number of people participating is increasing, which is really wonderful. But we really need to look at space for them to operate efficiently and safely going forward.
Thank you, Nick. A lot of us can visualize that space because we had Steve as a presenter a little over a year ago, and he invited us to come for a tour of the county clerk's office. So we did do that. Here's another question. Are state or county roles being developed to focus on climate change, preparedness, mitigation, and prevention?
Certainly, there's a lot of state agencies are hiring a lot of people in a lot of different programs. The city of Bend has, I think, a climate action committee appointed by the board. There's a lot of activities. Certainly, right now we're in the process of we hired. Gosh, maybe a year and a half ago, we hired a new position called a strategic initiatives manager, which we did model after the city of Bend and some others. And she has been really great at applying for grants that we can then use to address sustainability issues in our county facilities, so that are going to be much more energy efficient. The board, she processes our commercial property assessment program. It's called CPACE. I can't remember what all the letters stand for exactly right now, but it's designed to encourage commercial properties that are upgrading their facilities, changing their facilities, building new facilities to be energy efficient, and then they have tax benefits if they achieve that. So we have a person that's working on it partially there. We have a new comprehensive plan that is under development. It's going to come to public hearings here in short order. I understand that it might address climate-related issues as well. And then we'll see, based on the public hearings, if the policies are adopted there. That's another one that's directly related to policy development. And then what would implementation look like going forward? Certainly, we have a road department that is very effective in helping us make the best purchases for our employees. We're purchasing a lot of hybrid vehicles. We have been for a long time. But in terms of just a specific staff person, we don't have just one specific staff person at this time, whereas some organizations, many organizations do.
We have about 10 more minutes for questions. Do we have any further questions? I know that our audience is very engaged with what's happening in the news, and so I know that there are probably some questions still out there.
Great. I'm here I'm here as long as you need me.
You've already spoken to the need for other meetings this afternoon, so I definitely want to respect your time and end at 1 p.m.
Yeah, Thursdays are one of my favorite days because we have a new employee orientation, how I kick off my day. So we welcome almost 20 new employees to the county almost every month when we have a county of 1,200 people. And then I make rounds meeting with the assessor and community development department, solid waste department, road department, meet with Eric King and other city managers today. So first Thursday of the month is always a good one.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions, I think we could close a little bit early. Does anyone want to ask any further questions before Nick is able to get on with the rest of his day?
I see.
Nick, did you have something to say?
Well, I just saw the chat pop up that some county positions are aligned with the league's positions. I will just say, I have worked with Peggy Lynch, one of the league's representatives in Salem for many, many, many years, and she is just so terrific to work with primarily on land use issues, where her area of emphasis. Maybe she works on other issues, but she is really terrific. Oh, I see that one pop up. Yes, County College, we are still offering it, and we really encourage people to participate in that. We conduct that generally the Monday or Tuesday before Labor Day, and then it runs until election night. This next year it will. So that'll be quite a class coming up. And we start to advertise for it and recruit for people to participate in about early summer, and by midsummer or so, we work with the board and we make sure we get those appointments made. And it's a really great opportunity for folks that haven't heard about it to learn about all the departments, visit a lot of the departments. It's a really great program.
Okay. And it sounds like someone wants a little bit more explanation of what County College is. It sounds like if I try to go find a link on the website right now, there won't be much there until next summer.
Yeah, good question. I haven't looked at the link online, but it's an opportunity to learn about each of the county departments, the services that they provide. You've got to meet their staff, their department heads. And it's really exciting. We're going to go out to the road department and see the big equipment that they operate with. Go to the solid waste department, learn about their operations. Go up to the county fairgrounds and learn about Fair and Expos activities. Our clerk's office, as you mentioned, is really terrific. Often that's on the last night. And it coincides with an election, which is a very exciting topic. But it's all the departments that I had listed. Everybody will participate, and you get to learn a little bit about each department. Each class ranges, I don't know, 2 to 2.5 hours. Lots of questions and answers that are really fun, dynamic discussions. And I think the class is between 25 and 30 people on average.
Okay. So if it covers that wide geographical area that you're mentioning, it must be a multi-week session. How many weeks is it?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. I think it's 10 weeks. Right.
Okay.
from late August or early September, kind of where that first date falls, until about election night.
So that sounds like a fantastic resource.
It is, and I'll just share with you that we have so many, well, I know Commissioner Adair went through it before she ran for office, but we have planning commissioners that have gone through it, that serve on the planning commission, that have been appointed to the planning commission by the Board of County Commissioners. So it's a great avenue to learn about county operations, and then people take the next step and then apply to serve on an appointed board or commission.
So I don't see any more questions. We have 5 minutes that Nick can spend with us. Any last questions, parting questions?
And I'll just, as you're waiting, if a question pops up, great, but I will just say, during the legislative session, the Board of County Commissioners meetings are all posted online, and our legislative meetings are generally all virtual. And anybody can observe them, can watch them, there will be a link right on our agenda. I don't know that we're going to go back in person. Perhaps we will for those. That's the only one that remains virtual, because we have lawmakers that are participating from either in their district offices around the region, or they can be in Salem. But those are great discussions. So those can be very dynamic discussions as well among our commissioners and with our local legislative delegation, our lobbyists. That's a great way to stay involved in the policy process.
Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of opportunities for either league members or general community members to get involved in what's happening at the county policy level.
Exactly. Yeah, and just as we are wrapping up, the Board of Commissioners is also making policy decisions at the local level on a regular basis. As I mentioned, the comprehensive plan public hearings are coming up. The transportation system plans public hearings just concluded, but those policy documents really set the foundation for the future of where and how we're going to grow, and it can relate to some of the other services we provide. It's really directed toward growth management, and those are really important. So we really look forward to your members participating in those public hearings as well.
Okay, so it is now 12:58. There are any last questions, you can ask them, and if not, then we can wrap up this meeting. Okay, well, I would like to thank you, Nick, for your time. I know you're a super busy person, so I appreciate your carving out time for this meeting, giving us as much information as you did, because I could see that you tailored your PowerPoint exactly to the questions that our most interested members already had. So thank you for crafting your presentation around their questions. I would like to mention that our holiday party will be on December 16th. And then our first Thursday will next month be on January 4th, again, back at the Unitarian Fellowship. And our presenter will be Josh Gage from the Mobile Crisis Assessment Team. And I saw one last hand raised from Karen Zacharias. Karen, do you have a question?
That's just a clapping hand to say
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, clapping hand, not a raised hand.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you again, Nick, for your time, and thank you everyone for joining the meeting, for your questions before the meeting and your questions during the meeting. I really appreciate it. It really makes it a much richer discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.